Well, I met him as a guy who kind of worked at DC, and one of the times Neal either came out or was going in, and he said, "What do you got there?" And so he looked through my work and gave me a bunch of pointers. I had a couple of caped figures walking. He said, "Now you gotta draw the guys first and put the capes on later. You just drew the capes and put feet on the bottom, right?" I went, "Yes, I guess I did." Because I did. And so on and so forth. Neal, all through the time that we've known him, was that kind of guy. He would give you the word in season. He'd let you know the next step and how to look at things and how to think through things to make the work more fun for you and more fun for the viewer. A long involved story about the Peril in Plastic, which had the Kaluta sound effect, if you remember it, Kaluta. Neal was fascinated with my name, and if he hadn't gone through the halls of DC going Kaluta, Kaluta, I might never have gotten a couple of jobs I got off of Julie Shorts. I remember when I showed him stuff and he goes, "Kaluta, I've heard that name." I'm thinking, "Yeah, I know you have. They've been singing it over here because of the sound effect." So Neal Adams worked the next little office over at this place, and he had a Lucy projector, what Al Williamson called a swipograph, but it's really a opaque projector.
Yes.
And he would do little drawings and then project them down and then draw them nice and big with his style. And then I'd give it to one of the great inkers that he had. And he'd brought these 3 pages of El Diablo, horses, the Zorro guy. It was so gorgeous. And he gave it to Joe, and I happened to be in the room sitting talking to Joe. And Joe looks at me, looks and looks, and Neal's there. He says, "Okay, well, I'm thinking of giving it to Kaluta." Now, I couldn't ink my way out of a wet paper bag. And if we could have a picture of Neal's face when Joe said that, it was what was worth it. Joe laughed for half an hour because he didn't want to say, "Oh, no, we can't give it to him." Neal didn't want to put down the young man, but he wouldn't have. He'd have paid money for me not to touch those originals. As it was, Bernie got it and did a damn good job. Yeah, brought in a painting, an oil painting of Conan the Barbarian. It was for Savage Sword of Conan or something like that. But I was called into his office and he said, "Mike, what we want on these covers is that you won't be able to reach in and just pick up the figures, like really sharp, because you got this kind of blur." I said, "Do you have a reduction lens?" He said, "I beg your pardon." And there's Yes Man that was standing there. Said, "Oh, we got those in production." Came back, and it was a beautiful reduction lens. And I said, "When I look at it," and I put it way over. I said, "I'll look at it through there and make it the size of a cover." And you could see in his eyes, he went, "Oh, I get it." What did he say? "Give me 3 of these." So yes, we did. We never buddied. We never sat around and chatted about stuff. But I got to go in his office 2 or 3 times. Yeah, I've been a fan of his since the Harvey versions of his Spirit book came out. The 2 different Harvey comics. It was like being blessed and going to school at the same time, because he just made everything work. And although if I'd been a big Spirit fan and reader as a kid, then I'd know his techniques and the way he would do it. But those Harvey books were my introduction, and they were so beautifully done, so brilliantly presented, colors and everything else like that, that I was a big fan. And it was some years later that other folks became interested in reprinting some of his work, sometimes in black and white, which was educational. I don't guess the fans cared for it so much in black and white, but we artists loved it, loved seeing it in black and white. Al Williamson asked me to go over to Wally Wood's studio and pick up all the artwork that Williamson had lent him for the Wits End fanzine, which included Savage World, that magnificent strip, and then all kinds of loose pieces of this, that, and the other thing. And one of them was a Will Eisner page. Now, I had no idea, our comics are this big. I mean, our pages, that big. And of course, it was magnificent. It was the Spirit breaking in through a basement window and coming down through subways and this and that thing. I'm holding it in my hand like that. Yeah, tons of stuff like that. I only once got to see him do a little bit of painting. Russ Cochran said, if you can get him to start a painting, that's what you want to see. You want to see it go from the blank canvas into something, because it just appears magically. But I got to see later, during a second or third cover for Back to the Stone Age. It's Blontana or Pluto or something back, and this giant mammoth or mastodon coming in picture, and it was very jungly and very like that, and he had just daubed over in this palette. You couldn't tell what the colors were, and he got a thin coating of something, and he just went on to the tusks, and it went from daylit jungle into moonlit swamp like that. I went, wow. And he said, oh, you saw that, did you? Yes, I did. But I wouldn't have known how to do that, ever. Yeah. He was a good guy. Really great guy. Sitting in the living room once, TV's on, so the sound's off, but it's just on, and somebody's reporting, I think at that time from Vietnam, and Frank says, look at that. And the guy's in the jungle, and there's light coming down, and all you see is that, and then this. The rest of it's all shadowed. He says, that's all you need. And of course, how many of his pictures do you do like that? We know them intimately. But he was obviously always looking. Krenkel said that Frazetta had the kind of eyes that could read Bible print from across the room. So his eyes were very, very powerful. And also, the other thing he credited him with was being able to hold his hands still, like, and he gluing something together. He'd have this, he'd have that, and he didn't do this thing that I do, and everybody else I know does. He would just hold it. There you go. So he had his own superpowers, and was admired by most everybody. Yeah, I know Batman. Now, I enjoyed the TV show for a while until it was just all silly and no drama. And then Neal came in and reinvented Batman, and from that point on, that's what I did. I was standing on his shoulders. What I could hope for was to do some kind of Batman cover that Neal would go, oh, hey, I like that, because he was the arbiter at that point. You know, he knew what he was doing, and I was really trying to get there. The Batman covers I did were fed to me. We like to see him in the subway, or the first detective comics that I did, where he's up on a smokestack shooting a rifle. I had to say, a rifle? But Batman doesn't use weapons. And I said, that's the whole point. We want the kids to go, hey, what's Batman doing with a rifle? To the point of where it's possible that when the cover came out, they had a big old sticker on there saying, why is Batman got a rifle? Or something like that, because they used to do that. Yeah. But I tried, I was thinking of Will Eisner when I did it, because I got that drastic down shot. And I did all kinds of lines that if you look at it closely, you'll see, what are those lines? Well, it's where I thought the color would go. You know, shadowed lines and such. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. They were looking, I'd done as many as 5 or 6 pages every 2 months for something. I wasn't ready. I knew I wasn't ready. But I did ask, and it took about 6 minutes, and I had it. Now, the first 20 pages I got to do, I got at least 3 months to draw it. But I got to pencil and ink my own stuff, so if there any praise or any condemnation, it was on my work. And that again was the gift. At the same time I was doing the Carson of Venus 5-page things, and by that point I was writing the stories, adapting them from the book and drawing them. And then also The Spawn of Frankenstein, which was a backup feature in Phantom Stranger. And I didn't even realize how much I was doing. Somebody referred to him as a natural man. He was a natural man. He just did what he did. He'd get up in the morning, light a cigarette, and work, and draw pictures. And he loved drawing pictures, loved talking about drawing pictures. But Wrightson and I were roommates for 2 or 3 years. And then later on we had the studio together with all the other guys. And Bernie was just a damn genius artist. There was almost nothing he couldn't do. He couldn't draw a dog without giving it a big mustache. But we used to tease him about that. I got to help by drawing some backgrounds, a couple of layouts and things like that. But it was fun to help Bernie, because Bernie was really doing the job. And you can tell even from that first Night Master that a lot of the strengths that he'd be known for were right there. They're already there. He was working like a slave on his Conan stuff, and we had no idea that he was just a few blocks down on 72nd Street. We met and shook hands and talked about this thing. From that point on, we got invited over to the studio and hung out, and then at some point, I think Barry was the original main engine. He wanted to get a studio away from his apartment, and the kind of space he wanted, there had to be more than one person in it because he'd be able to afford it. So he and Bernie went out looking and trying to find some place. And somewhere along the line, they got Jeff interested. Bernie was asking me. Now, I was paying, I don't know, $125 a month up on West 92nd Street for a little fifth floor walk-up room. By the time I said yes, they'd found the space and they'd all pretty much painted it up. So I got to do very little of the drudge work. I think we all figured it'd be a lot more than it was. But as it would turn out, we all had our times of day that we would be working the hardest. And they were rarely at the same time of day, except, they'd all cross over at some point, like around dinner time. And we'd go off to 2nd Avenue and eat dinner all together. Late night, Barry would play his guitar, but during the day, from noon on, he'd work on those big pictures. I first met Jeffrey same year I met Wrightson. It was that big World Science Fiction Convention, and we did the convention. It was like we'd known each other for years, and of course his work was spectacular. Jeff was like a waterfall. He'd been doing spot illustrations for fantastic and amazing stories. He really became a cover painter for Berkeley, I guess, and Bantam, and maybe even Ace, I can't remember. But he did lots and lots and lots of those. I don't know enough of the story about how Idol came about, but it was obviously like full born. It's completely his. Nobody gave him the idea for it. And all the pages, I think, are about this big, and they're esoterically Jeff. If you get it, you get it, and you'd get Jeff. If you don't get it, then you probably wouldn't get Jeff. I have a little story, but it's for me, it's one of the most charming stories. I was in Glasgow, I think it was, and somebody had got us from wherever we were staying, and driving to a breakfast, and a little bitty car, and I got to sit next to Alan, sitting here, and the sunlight's coming in this little window, and we're zooming, and whoever's driving or whoever's the other reverse shotgun is concerned that we're not going to get there in time or whatever like that. And somebody wanted to know what time it was. And Alan reaches in, takes out a pocket watch. Big, like what they used to call it, an onion? They used to call it something. Anyway, and he popped it open, and there was a little Stonehenge inside. And the sun was coming in, and he could look at it, and he just faked the time. But that's all it was. There was no clock. It was Stonehenge. That impressed the heck out of me. Pure. And the timing was great. And it's like, here later years, did that guy did Alan go, okay, do it now, I'm going to, or was it just the luck of the draw? And I have a feeling from that time that it was just the luck of the draw. We worked together on I think for Tom Strong's adventures, one sentence of kind of what should be taking place. And then I elaborated on it, and then he took it and he wrote a nice big long article about what was going on. And it certainly was a lot of fun. The drawing was just lots of drawing, and it was outlandish. only, again, met him a little bit in passing in the bullpen at Marvel. The first Conan painting I brought in, I had him jumping down on top of a couple of ape guys that had grabbed a woman or something like that. And I had him do this thing, a sword and a knife, and John said, he's too ugly to be our hero. I said, he's a barbarian, blah, blah, blah. So I got to repaint that. It came out, people liked it, and it recently sold for some amazing amount of money, you know, second, third, fourth hand. But it's like, well, golly. Kind of impressive. I never did any Marvel comics. I did Marvel covers, and I had one, basically, most of the covers I did there were for Conan the King, and it was one editor, Larry Hama. So I didn't get a whole overview of the rest of the thing. I heard the stories that people would tell, but I was never a story conference with any of the X-Men people or anything. So I was passing, I guess. A lot of the guys that worked for Marvel loved comics and loved Marvel comics specifically, and they'd always loved comics, superhero comics, and their dream was to draw the Spider-Man, draw Thor, draw this, draw that, and there it was, waiting for them. The people at DC seemed to just be, they were all artists in their hearts, but they seemed to just be providing a service in a way. I don't know how to put it. Again, I wasn't paying much attention to what everybody else was doing, but I enjoyed working at DC. It was full script, so that meant I knew where to put everybody, where to set them so that the word balloons would go right to where they are. And I understood, and I still understand that at the Marvel, that the writer pretty much did the dialogue afterwards. So no matter what the artist drew, you have these little balloons crisscrossing all across, sometimes over top of some really nice art too.